I never thought I'd see the day I'd be standing outside my own home with 2 suitcases at my feet, feeling the cool bite of the morning air against my cheeks, watching the door close in my face. You know that sound a door makes when it shuts and you realize, in that exact second, you're no longer welcome? It's not just the click of the latch, it's finality. And the strangest thing? Inside my cardigan pocket, right against my heart, I had a letter that should have changed everything. It was from the Port Arbelle Lottery Commission, telling me I had just won 14.7 million. That day had started so quietly, so normally. Port Arbelle mornings almost always begin with fog, that kind that drapes over the Lighthouse District like a soft gray shawl. My Victorian house, the one I'd lived in for 37 years, stood in the middle of it, its stained glass windows catching what little light there was, floors groaning the way old houses do, like they're speaking to themselves. I've always loved mornings like that. There's a stillness in the air, a feeling you have a few precious moments before the world wakes up. I was at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, sorting through the mail. Mostly junk bills, flyers, that glossy catalog from a gardening supply store I never ordered from but still receive every month. And then I saw it. A plain envelope from the Lottery Commission. It took me a beat to remember the ticket. I'd bought it months ago, on my birthday, as a little gift to myself, tucked it into my purse and forgot it existed. When I tore open that envelope and read the words, I swear the entire house seemed to go still. 14.7 million before taxes. After taxes, just under 9 million. I had to put my coffee cup down because my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I wish I could tell you I screamed, or danced, or even smiled, but instead, I just sat there, staring at the paper, thinking of all the nights I'd lain awake, worrying about property taxes, about repairs I couldn't afford on my pension from the Port Arbelle Botanical Society. Thinking of the last 6 months since my daughter Jessalyn and her husband Rafferty had moved back in temporarily after his investment firm collapsed. Temporarily had turned into them spreading into every corner of my life, my kitchen rearranged without my asking, my studio converted into Rafferty's home office. I slipped the letter into my cardigan pocket, feeling its edges against my chest. I decided right then, I wouldn't tell them yet. That evening, I'd cook a nice dinner, open a bottle of wine, and surprise them. Maybe I'd even agree to those renovations Jessalyn had been pushing for. It was going to change everything, but I didn't get the chance. I was heading for the front door, keys in hand, when Jessalyn intercepted me in the hallway. Her hair, usually perfectly done, was pulled back hastily, and her eyes were sharp, almost too bright. "Mom, we need to talk," she said. Before I could respond, Rafferty appeared from the kitchen. He had a coffee cup in one hand and wore that polished but slept-in look, his shirt wrinkled under his tailored jacket. And there it was, that smile, the one that never reached his eyes. "Mirel," he said, using my first name like he always did. "We've been talking about the living arrangements. We think it's time for some changes. You know when someone says something that you know is going to hurt before you even understand what it is? That was me, in that moment." Jessalyn motioned for me to sit at the dining table. "We think it would be best if we took over the house entirely. We want to raise our family here, but it needs modern updates, and honestly, 3 generations under one roof is complicated." I stared at her. "Took over?" Rafferty's tone was smooth. "We think you'd be happier in a retirement community. Serenity Gardens has some excellent options. We've already spoken with them." I felt the letter in my pocket like it was burning through the fabric. I could have ended this conversation right there, told them about the win, but something deep inside me said, "Don't, not yet. This house is in my name," I said quietly. "I paid for it with the money I earned from illustrating the Coastal Flora Encyclopedia." Rafferty's voice cooled. "And you've reminded Jessalyn of that sacrifice for 20 years. Don't you think it's time to let go?" I stood, needing space. "I'm going out. We can talk later." They exchanged a glance, and Rafferty said, "We've already arranged everything. The movers will be here tomorrow." Tomorrow? My pulse roared in my ears. I walked out the front door, down the familiar streets toward the harbor, the fog clinging to my hair and coat. By the time I reached the old lighthouse, I knew exactly what I had to do. A taxi took me to West Holme, to the Pinnacle Tower. 3 hours later, I walked out with a trust in my name. An initial $250 in a temporary account, and the knowledge that my win could remain anonymous. And I didn't go home. Not yet. I found myself in the office of Valencia Moretti, one of Port Arbelle's most respected attorneys. I told her everything about them moving in, about this sudden push to send me to assisted living, about how they'd been telling people it was my decision, and now, about the win. She leaned back in her chair, eyes sharp. "Secure your position before telling them anything," she said. "They've already shown they're willing to control your assets." When I finally walked back into my house that evening, it was to find strangers, designers from Harrove Interiors, taking measurements in my living room. Jessalyn and Rafferty stood there, as if this was all perfectly normal. That was the first time I told them to get out. They refused, and so began the battle. They stole my original botanical illustrations pieces worth thousands and stashed them in a storage unit. I called the police, not to press criminal charges, but to make a record, a paper trail. I wanted it documented that I wasn't going to be bullied quietly. That night, I packed 2 suitcases and left for the Crimson Tide Hotel. My suite overlooked the harbor, the lighthouse flashing steadily in the distance. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. From that hotel room, I filed the eviction notice. I started to feel the edges of myself again. And when I walked into Blackburn's auction house days later and saw the 19th century maritime charts of Captain Elias Winthrop, I felt something else too, excitement. I bid. I won. And in that moment, I remembered I wasn't just a woman being pushed out of her home. I was an artist. The Maritime Museum's director approached me that day, suggesting an exhibition that paired my work with the charts. And then came the lighthouse. Thaddeus Quinn told me about the North Point Lighthouse Keeper's Cottage. 2 acres, a private beach, and a studio with lights so perfect it felt like stepping into a dream. The moment I stood in that room, with the sea stretching endlessly beyond the glass, I knew this was my place. My advisor said I could easily afford it. So, I made the offer. 30 days, the same deadline for the eviction notice. As Jessalyn and Rafferty scrambled, trying to twist the story, I focused on what mattered: the museum, the new home, the life I was reclaiming. For the first time in decades, I wasn't living to prop someone else up. I wasn't sacrificing my work, my peace, my space. I had freedom. I had security. I had the horizon wide open and waiting. And I knew, without a single doubt, I would never give that up again.